Ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is Robert Davis. Myself, along with Christine Michelle, represent Johnathan Quiles in this matter. As stated, the state, Mr. Skinner, Ms. French, they represent the state. These are great people that have a very tough job. But that does not mean that they don't have to meet their burden. Burden is they have to prove that Mr. Quiles is the one that committed this crime. That crime, as you can see, is that of premeditated first-degree murder. They have to prove that Mr. Quiles is the, in fact, person who killed, and I'll say it just once, Ayanna Sawyer and her unborn child. They have to prove that. And they also have to prove that he premeditated it and did it in such a way to make sure, as the state said, that this was a heinous crime. I submit to you, as you hear the testimony over the next week, week and a half, the state will not be able to meet that burden. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the trier of fact. You are going to be hearing the testimony. You will be determining who's telling the truth. You will be determining who's making assumptions and who is not. Now, next one, Kristen. The state has also proved the issue or the charge of sexual battery. They are saying that Johnathan Quiles did in fact have sex with his niece, I.S. That's the state's version. That is what they are saying. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that at the end of the day, they will not be able to meet that burden. After you hear all the testimony, they will not be able to prove that Johnathan Quiles is in fact the father of the unborn child. There will be speculation that he is. There will be assumptions that he is. And we believe that the testimony you're going to hear by the family, as the state said, they're going to come in here, this is a big family, they're, for the most part, a fairly tight-knit group. But they will be assuming that based on that July weekend and thereabouts in that short time frame, they will be assuming that Johnathan Quiles is the one that fathered that child. There will be no direct evidence to say that he did. You will not hear it. You will hear from SS, who says she believes that he's the father. You're going to hear from Kimberly Mobley, the mother of IS. She believes that he's the father. But again, there will be no direct evidence. There will be no DNA to say he's the father. There will be no corroboration of that other than they believe he did it. Go ahead. The state must prove that Johnathan Quiles was in fact the person that killed IS. Again, they have to prove this. And they have to prove it in such a manner that it is beyond a reasonable doubt that Johnathan Quiles is the one that did it. the state is going to bring in detectives, various witnesses, all kinds of people from throughout the county over a very lengthy investigation. The state clearly said it. They don't have a body. We believe that you are going to hear that they're assuming that the scene is Ace Pick-a-Part, where Mr. Quiles worked. You will hear the testimony that, yes, IS left Terry Parker High School and she was last seen around 11 o'clock on December the 18th. But they cannot say for certain that she went to Ace Pick-a-Part where Mr. Quiles worked. They're going to show you these videos. You're going to see it. What you're not going to see is IS at Ace Pick-a-Part. What you're not going to see is any blood of a crime scene where he's alleged to have murdered her there. What you're not going to see is an actual killing and the use of a gun to kill IS, as the state has alleged. You're not going to see it. Therefore, we believe they cannot meet their burden of premeditated murder. And therefore, we believe there will be reasonable doubt. But again, Mr. Quiles has entered a plea of not guilty in this case. Mr. Quiles sits there with us at this table, and he is innocent of any and all crimes until they can prove otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe after you hear all of this, they cannot meet that burden. During jury selection, we went over this time and time and time again. Mr. Quiles doesn't have to prove anything. Not one thing. The state, Mr. Skinner and Ms. French, are the ones that have to prove it. And the person and the people they have to prove it to is you, ladies and gentlemen. You are the trier of fact. You are the ones that have to be the ones to listen to the evidence and listen to the testimony and view the evidence. And the state has to prove to you that a crime was committed. And we submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, they can't meet that burden. Again, we brought up during jury selection and questioning as to reasonable doubt. And that should be in front of you there on the screen. Reasonable doubt is that is speculative, imaginary, or a forced doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, the state is going to present to you over the next week, week and a half, a voluminous amount of evidence. Please pay attention to all of this. Pay attention to their timeline. We believe that their own timeline isn't going to fit. Why is that? We believe you're going to hear testimony that she was actually seen on the day of and after when the state is alleging she's dead. That, is reasonable doubt. They're saying she's dead, and people are saying they see her and are calling into the police to say that they've seen her. As the state has said, this started off as a runaway case. She was deemed a runaway and missing for a substantial period of time, more than a week, during the holidays. It isn't until approximately 3 weeks, close to a month, before they make a determination to go and search the Otis landfill. And we believe the testimony you're going to hear is after 3 weeks of searching, couldn't find the body. You are going to see items from Victoria's Secret that is said to have been found there. You're going to hear testimony that they believe that these items belong to IS. Ladies and gentlemen, these items that are found, that are Victoria's Secret, are sold in every Victoria's Secret store throughout the United States, if not the world. And we don't believe the state can actually prove that the items that they're going to show you, they believe are IS's, but they cannot prove for a fact that they are IS's. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that is reasonable doubt. It's speculative. You're going to hear from law enforcement witnesses. You were asked about all of this during voir dire. The fact that a witness is employed by law enforcement, he's just another witness. He's no better, no worse than anybody else that's going to take this stand. And you, ladies and gentlemen, will determine the truthfulness, the veracity, and the weight of the evidence and the testimony that they are going to be giving to you. They are no better, no worse than any other witness that takes a stand. They're human beings and they make mistakes just like everybody else. Now, this was brought up to you again during voir dire. The fact that we believe you're going to hear from Kamar Humphrey and his relationship with IS. And the fact that he is the one that sexually battered her previously during February or March of 2018. We believe that when he takes the stand and testifies, that you're going to hear that he lied about where he was on the date IS went missing. And the police, we believe the testimony you're going to hear is the police failed to properly investigate him as a possible suspect. And they didn't look into it as close as they could have. They're human. They made a mistake. Police never confirmed his alibi. The use of IS's credit card will come into play on the date she goes missing. Because at the time they're saying she is with Johnathan Quiles, her card is being used in a completely different side of town. But the state wants you to believe that Johnathan Quiles has taken her somewhere else. And please, listen to the testimony that you're going to hear as to the area she is seen in on the date she goes missing, as well as where these other people see her after the fact. These will be critical elements, and we believe flaws in the state's case. There's going to be several things in evidence and testimony that you are going to hear that we believe are in question. That of Joseph Quiles. Yes, his own brother is going to come here. He's coming here from New York. You're going to hear from his own brother that these two have a very strained and complicated relationship, to put it mildly. Family dynamics always are. The state, as they said in their opening, says that Joseph Quiles says that Johnathan Quiles made all these statements about confessing to doing these things to IS. We believe that the testimony you're going to hear is Johnathan Quiles made statements, but his brother thought he was joking. We believe the testimony you're also going to hear is he doesn't believe his brother could even do it. He's not that type of guy. Not a violent person. He's a family man. Loves his family, believes in his family. You're going to hear from Damian Hatch. Damian Hatch is going to be called to testify as to this alleged conversation that occurred over at the jail. There are going to be several things that are stated. Pay attention to this testimony, ladies and gentlemen, because there's inconsistencies galore here. When you hear these inconsistencies, it will make you, we believe, question the truthfulness and veracity. You're also going to hear potentially from a couple of others that are jailhouse snitches, wires. But again, what is their motive? They're doing this to get something from the state so that they can get either a reduced sentence or gain favor with the state in their own case. You're going to hear, as the state said, about a DNA rape kit. Going to be that of Kamar Humphrey in the crotch of IS's underwear. You're going to hear from FDLE as to that. Now, the state has alleged that Mr. Quiles' DNA is also there. We believe the testimony you're going to hear from FDLE is that Kamar Humphrey's DNA that is there is that of semen. The DNA of Mr. Quiles is not, or could not be confirmed to be semen. It's just a DNA transfer. State wants to use that as proof that they say Mr. Quiles had a sexual relationship. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear the testimony, Kamar Humphrey did, but there will be no evidence to prove that Johnathan Quiles actually had a sexual relationship with IS. Your role in this case as a juror is to listen to the evidence, evaluate those witnesses, again, their truthfulness, their veracity, and their accuracy. Pay attention to these inconsistencies. We can't emphasize this enough. Inconsistencies lead to reasonable doubt is what will lead to a not guilty verdict. Make sure that the evidence presented by the state actually applies to this case and is not there to inflame or reach to your emotions which will lead to allegations and assumptions. Pay attention to the reasonable alternatives. That's where using your common sense, where the state says, you can go ahead and use your common sense. If A happened, B must have happened. Well, just because A happened doesn't always mean B happened. It could have led to C. Your job here is to weigh the evidence and determine, again, who's telling the truth and whether or not the state has met their burden. When questioning the evidence that the state presents, make sure you establish that a crime was actually committed here. And that the person that committed that crime was Johnathan Quiles. Again, we don't believe the state can meet that burden. When weighing the course of the evidence through the course of this case, we believe you will still question as to whether or not this gave rise to reasonable doubt. And that reasonable doubt, at the end of the case, you will have to find Mr. Quiles not guilty. Right? At the conclusion of the case, you will be given rules for deliberation. They're there on the screen in front of you, and these are very important. The case must be decided, as we stated multiple times during voir dire, only on the facts and evidence presented here in this courtroom. And the state must present those facts and evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And we don't believe they can. Reasonable doubt is, again, one that wavers, vacillate, or becomes speculative in nature. Remember what we say as lawyers? We're here to say this to give you a guidance of what we believe you're going to hear or not hear in this case. What we say is not evidence. What those witnesses say when they take the stand, that's the evidence you have to pay attention to. And that evidence, at the end of the day, will again lead you to a not guilty verdict in this case. Your feelings in this case should not be influenced by prejudice, bias, or sympathy. We believe you're going to hear from several witnesses that will be here to testify for that very purpose. Stick to the facts. And we believe the state will not be able to prove those facts. And at the conclusion, based on those facts, you will find Mr. Quiles not guilty because the state can't meet this burden of beyond a reasonable doubt to prove he committed a crime. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.